Prathamam Sadgurum Vande Shri Krishnan Tadanantaram Guru Papatmanam Tratam Shri Krishnas Tvamalatmana Kasturi Tilakam Lalat Patale Vakshasthale Kaustubham Nasagre Varmauktikam Karatale Venu Kare Kankanam Sarvange Harichandanam Sulalitam Kanthe Chamuktavali Gopastri Pariveshtito Vijayate Gopal Chudamani Aho Chitramaho Chitram Vande Tatprema Bandhanam Yadbadham Muktidam Muktam Brahma Krida Bhrigi Kritam Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tagvam Ha Devamatma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukchurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. Dear devotees, we'll do a few minutes of chanting, and after that I'll continue with yesterday's topic. Radhe Krishna Yesterday I was explaining to you about the global significance of Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj's contribution to the body of spiritual knowledge and understanding that is available here on this earth planet. From a larger perspective, what has been the impact and what will be the impact of the teachings of Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj that he left behind while he was here on this earth planet. So I began by saying that although there's a perfect system to establish and maintain spiritual knowledge on this earth planet, starting from Shri Krishna himself activating Maya, manifesting this universe, what we call Srishti, producing the Vedas and other scriptures in the world in their eternal form, sending saint after saint on the earth planet to further explain those teachings, himself coming, taking avatar. All of this is going on. It's a whole prearranged program orchestrated by Shri Krishna himself to ensure that the souls living under Maya who need to find God, they have the required knowledge. Nonetheless, despite all this effort, because the world is populated with material souls, with minds afflicted by all the Mayic faults, anger, greed, jealousy, dishonesty, all of these things afflict all Mayic minds. And especially because all of these rajas and tamas qualities of the human mind come even more to the forefront during Kali Yuga. So despite this perfect system of establishing and maintaining this scriptural knowledge in the world, it gets distorted. The Sanatan Dham itself has nothing happen to it. It's always in its perfect form. Vedas are always in their perfect form. But how it's perceived in the world can be distorted, and that can create a lot of confusion. So yesterday I explained how without introducing any new philosophy or any new explanation, Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj was able to clarify all the prevailing doubts and remove all the confusions that are prevalent in this Kali Yuga. He explained things that had already been explained in the scriptures at many places, and he gave us the quotations for them. He explained things that had been already said by other saints in their own writings. The uniqueness and the significance of what Sri Kripaluji Maharaj did is that he took it all. Other saints, when they wrote, it was from a certain perspective, explaining a certain specific thing. Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj took the views of all the scriptures and all the saints, and he reconciled the whole thing into a cohesive fabric that makes sense. So that's one thing. And the other thing, he didn't just do it for the scholars. He did it for everybody. This is also unique, that in the past there have been highly educated, scholarly saints. But no one has ever done both. Explain it to all the scholars so they're satisfied, their intellect is satisfied, and explain it so that all the common people, even those with no scriptural knowledge, could also understand the very same thing. And not only understand it, but practically apply it in their life and see the benefit in their life. So yesterday I touched on a few of these major confusions that prevail in Kali Yuga, one being the fact that there are different religions in this world. And different people at different places on this globe worship God in different ways and call him by different names. So I told you that Kripaluji Maharaj always emphasized that God is only one, and you can call him by any name. Ananta Nama Rupaya. He has uncountable names, uncountable forms. Call him by any name, think of him in any form, and he will come to you. So everyone, anywhere in this world, anywhere in this universe, who's worshiping God is worshiping the same God, because there can only be one God. He also clarified that there's a difference between supreme divine God and celestial gods. This is also not a new philosophy. It's throughout the Vedas, Upanishads, Gita. He told many times the story from Kena Upanishad, where the Devtas went to Bhagwan. Devtas meaning the Mayic celestial gods. They're not divine God. They're material, just like you and I. But they exist in Swarg, which is also a material dimension, but just refined, elevated from this physical Mrityulok where we are. So these Devtas, they went to Bhagwan and asked for his help to defeat the demons who had taken over their Swarg. Then with Bhagwan's help, they defeated them. After that, having received God's help, they felt like, oh yes, we're so great, we defeated the demons. This happens to us so many times. We're approaching some difficult task, and we think, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Oh, Krishna, please help me do this. And then we do this task, and we do it very well, and someone compliments us. Oh, you did such a great job. And we think, ha. Just before you were feeling so, oh, I don't know if I can do it, Krishna, you please help me. Then once we do it successfully, we forget about him totally. We think, I did it. So the Devatas had this same problem, and Bhagwan decided to remove that pride, because that kind of pride keeps a soul from surrendering to God. So he appeared before them, and they couldn't recognize him. They were dazzled by this luminous form that he had taken. Eventually he disappeared, and in his place Uma Devi was there, and she explained to them, because they recognized her, that oh, this was Bhagwan. He came to remind you of your place. So using this historical event, which is described in Kena Upanishad, Kripaluji Maharaj always emphasized that the celestial gods get their power from Supreme God. Think of them as employees, servants, but not divine Supreme God. This is an important distinction, which it's a very common confusion in India and all over the world, that Swarg is synonymous with the divine world. It's not. Ved, although it gives the incentive of Swarg, saying do good actions and you can go and stay in Swarg, it also says, Ishta purtam manyamana varishtham nanyat shreyo vedayante pramudha nakasya prishthe te sukrite nubhutvemam lokam hinataram va vishanti. Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Those who make all this effort to go to Swarg, they're foolish, because it's only temporary. You go there and enjoy, sure, but then you're bound to come back in this world, and you're not even guaranteed to come back as a human. You may come back in the lower species and have to wait your turn for another human birth, because there are so many other souls waiting for the chance to be born as a human, who are currently occupying spots in the other species. So you see, Swarg is not the ultimate attainment. Brahma bhuvana loka punaravartinorjuna. Gita. Mamupetya tu kaunteya punarjanmana vidyate. Shri Krishna says, Arjun, even if you go to the topmost abode of Swarg, Brahma's abode, you don't stay there forever. You have to be reborn on this earth planet. But if you come to me, then you never have to be reborn again. So you see, there's a difference between Swarg and the divine world. Krishna says you go to Swarg, you have to come back here. You come to me, you never come back here. So going to Krishna and going to Swarg are two different things. Ye pyanya devata bhakta yajante shraddhayan vita te pimameva kaunteya yajantya vidhi purvakam. Gita. Hey Arjun, although those who worship the celestial gods indirectly are worshipping me, because I'm the one employing those celestial gods and giving them the power to do their work, yet still the one who worships those celestial gods does so out of ignorance, because they could have just worshipped me directly. So worshipping devatas is different. If you worship devatas, you go to Swarg, that's only a temporary thing. Swargahu swalpa anta dukkhadai. Ramayana. You go to Swarg, and the happiness over there, the pleasures, are greater than the pleasures on this earth planet, but they're still swalp, insignificant, compared to divine happiness. And anta dukkhadai, in the end, it ends in sadness, because you have to leave that enjoyment and come back here on this earth planet. It's a straightforward philosophy, but again, as I asked you yesterday, how many people in the world knew this or know it today unless they've heard the speeches of Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj? Almost nobody. I also explained to you that Sri Maharaji reconciled all the apparently contradictory teachings of our scriptures very elegantly, just by saying that although you'll find in certain scriptures or in the same scripture in different places these apparent contradictions. One is saying do good actions and go to Swarg. Another is saying no, you have to go beyond that, attain God. One is saying follow the path of Gyan. One is saying follow the path of Karma. One is saying do tapasya. One is saying do bhakti. Why are there all these different teachings in the scriptures? So I explained to you that Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj says that since every individual is made up of two parts, the eternal soul and the temporary body, so there are two kinds of teachings in our scriptures. There are those teachings that relate only towards maintaining a nice harmonious existence here on this earth planet. And there are those teachings that relate to finding God. So one relates to the physical body, one relates to the soul. One is called aparadharma, the do's and don'ts for being a good person in the world. One is called paradharma. Savai punsam paro dharmo yato bhaktiradhokshaje. Bhagavatam. Par means supreme. The supreme dharma is bhakti. All the other practices come in the first category. Only one thing comes in the second category, bhakti. And bhakti means surrender to God to receive His grace, because only through His grace you can attain Him. Then you look at all these various teachings and paths in the scriptures and you realize bhakti is for the one who understands that God is the goal of his life. But there are many, many people, even after having it explained to them, their mind doesn't accept it. So Ved doesn't leave those people out in the cold that, okay, then go away. I have nothing for you. No. Okay, you're not desiring God? Do this. Do good karma. At least you'll get some more worldly enjoyments. It's like telling a child who doesn't want to go to class, if you go to class, I'll give you this candy afterwards. So the candy has no value in and of itself. You know it's a temporary thing. But it's an incentive to get that child moving in the right direction. So do these good actions. Go to Swarg, enjoy over there. Why? Because at least by doing the good actions, you'll improve the sattvic quality of your mind, which will give you more clarity, and eventually you'll realize, wait a minute, what am I doing? How many lifetimes am I going to spend trying to go to Swarg and come back here? Is there anything beyond that? So, in a nutshell, this is how the Vedas work as a kalpa vriksh, a general store, a multi-tiered educational system. So there's something for everyone to take everyone in the right direction, but eventually everyone has to graduate to the path of bhakti. So you see there's no contradiction between paths. Every path takes you somewhere, but only one path takes you all the way to God. Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj also emphasized and established this fact very strongly in the world, that the Vedas are the ultimate scriptural authority. We accept what is written in other scriptures and we accept what is said by saints to the extent that it is Ved Sammat, that it agrees with what is said in the Vedas. Why? Because Veda is the only scripture which is apaurusheya, is not produced by any saint, and it's not even produced by God himself. It's an eternal divine power. Other scriptures are produced by divine personalities. But Ved, every word of Ved is eternal. Even a single word doesn't change through eons. Every time it's produced in the exact same form. So, although Kripaluji Maharaj always said, never have durbhavana for anyone, even the one who's totally wrong, even the one who's a bad person, okay, you may want to avoid him, but don't have durbhavana. Don't do remembrance of the bad qualities of that person, because you're just developing hate for them, and that poisons your own heart, makes your heart more impure. So respect everyone, respect all saints, respect all religions, all scriptural writings. This was the instruction of Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj. But he said, respect, don't necessarily accept a wrong philosophy. So if it's not in agreement with Vedas, Bhagwan bhi aake bolein, hum swikar nahi karenge. Even if God himself comes on the earth planet and says something which doesn't coordinate with the Vedas, we'll do namaskar to him, but we'll do tiraskar to his philosophy. In other words, we won't accept his philosophy, we'll refute his philosophy. This is a way of explaining that the Vedas are the ultimate authority. So although we respect all teachers, all gurus, all religions, all scriptural writings, but the basis for our faith is faith in the Vedas. What Vedas say about God is the basis for us believing in God. And everything grows out of that. Later, as we practice according to the teachings and we progress on the path of bhakti, we get our own experience and we understand on a much deeper level who God is. And we start to actually get the true knowledge of Vedas dawns in our mind the more experience we get. So there are two possible goals. Tayo shreya adadanasya sadhu bhavati hiyater thadya upreyo vrinite. Kathopanishad. You can either attain God or you can attain the world. There's no third thing you can attain. So the goal of attaining God is called Shreya. And the goal of attaining more worldly enjoyment is called Preya. You can only have these two goals. So any path, any teaching, it's either taking you towards Shreya or it's taking you towards Preya. And Vedas are not saying either one is wrong. Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj is not saying either one is wrong. He's saying, know what you want and choose the appropriate path that's going to take you there. Don't assume that all paths are going to God. All paths are going towards Shreya. No, that's wrong. How could it be so? Do you say that in the world? If you're in middle of Manhattan and you're trying to find some landmark, it's too much traffic, so you're not driving. It's a nice day, you decide to walk. So you look at all the roads going in different directions, and you say, okay, I'm trying to get to the Empire State Building, but it doesn't matter what path I follow. I'll just walk. All paths will end up at the Empire State Building. If you said that if you asked someone for directions and they said, oh, it doesn't matter what way you walk, eventually you'll get there, you'd say, "Ye pagal hai kya?" So why do we say such crazy things when it comes to the spiritual path? That, oh, it's okay, all paths lead to God. It doesn't make any more sense on the spiritual side than it does on the physical side. So we have to be realistic. And with this knowledge, which was made clear by Shree Kripaluji Maharaj, anyone can know that is this path leading to humble surrender to God, to receive His grace? Okay, this is the path of Bhakti. It's Shreya. Anything else is Preya. Very simple. If you don't want that and you want something Preya in this world, fine. We have no problem. You can go ahead and follow that. One other big clarification that he made is that even within the field of Shreya, you have different possibilities of what to attain. See, the path is one, Bhakti, to reach God. The goals are many in the divine field. People normally say the opposite. Paths are many, goal is one. No, it's the exact opposite. The path is one, to get to God, Bhakti. But the goals are many. For example, you could get mukti. Normally when people think of attaining something divine, they talk of mukti. It's the most famous thing. But it's also the least desirable of all the divine attainments. Mukti means chutti. Sounds good. Chutti means release, vacation, a permanent vacation. Never be born in this world again. Never suffer again. But it also means never experience anything again, suffering or happiness. And even though in the state of mukti, the soul merges into God, in that state you don't experience God because you don't have a mind anymore. Your mind was material. You had to leave it behind. Body and senses too. Just your divine self, the soul, merges into God. So what can you experience without senses, body, and mind? Nothing, not even God. So this is not a truly desirable state. In fact, saints who have attained the states beyond that, like Rup Goswami, he says, Bhukti mukti sprihayavat pishachi hridi vartate bhaktir samrit sindhu. The desire for mukti is like a demoness because she can steal away the chance to experience God forever. If you stay within the field of preya, which in this verse is referred to with the name bhakti. Bhakti means worldly enjoyments. Okay, you're away from God, you're not experiencing God, but at least you still have the chance to experience God. Once you get mukti, it's forever. Nasa punaravartate. You'll never be reborn in this world. You'll remain in that state of perfect divine peace with no experience forever. So our scriptures tell, muktim dadasi karhichit smana bhakti yogam. Bhagavatam. Veda Vyasji says a little bit like Vyang say, he's teasing Krishna a little bit that, oh Krishna, you give mukti so easily. You're so quick to give mukti. Like someone surrenders to you and you say, what do you want? And he says, mukti. You say, okay, good, here. Like when Kagbhushundi pleased you that time, what did you say to him? Kagbhushundi manguvar ati prasanna mohijana animadik siddhi aparnidhi moksha sakal sukha khan. Moksha, mukti. Bhagwan Ram said to his devotee Kagbhushundi, you have pleased me so much today, I'm willing to give you a boon. So ask me for anything. Then he gave him some suggestions. Why not ask me for siddhis, yogic siddhis, great powers, not divine powers, material powers, but nonetheless great. You can impress anyone in this world. They'll fall at your feet and think you're God if you have such great siddhis. You could ask me for that. Aparanidhi, unlimited wealth, more than Kuber, I'll give it all to you. Or moksha, you could ask me for that. So Kagbhushundi is thinking to himself, you didn't find anyone up until now to turn into a Bevakoof yet today? You're trying to fool me? So he said, no, I don't want any of these things you're holding out in my face. I want that thing you're keeping tucked away in your back pocket that you're not showing me. Aviral bhakti vishuddha tav shruti puran jehi gav jehi yogish jehi khojat yogish muni prabhu prasad ko pav. I want bhakti, but not the bhakti I told you, which is the path to God. That's the bhakti we have to do. I'll talk about that further on in this series. I want the divine bhakti. He refers to it as avirala bhakti. It's also called siddha bhakti, prema bhakti, vishuddha bhakti. It's a divine power and it's God's most prized possession. Because everything is under God. Maya is under God. It does God's bidding. It only functions with the power it receives from God. Souls are under God. God is also giving us life. We're bound by His rules. We perform karma. We have to get the consequences. So God is beyond everything. But there's one thing that Krishna is under. Bhakti. Bhakti is the divine power that makes Krishna forget he's God. And any soul who receives that bhakti also receives that state. In other words, Bhagwan apne aap ko chota samajhte hain. God actually thinks of himself as smaller or equal to the soul who has received bhakti. So who wouldn't desire that? Instead of being God, I'm just the soul and you're supreme God, He comes right to you. You're my friend. We're like equals. Or He can even become your own son or your own daughter. In other words, aap bade hain. hain, ve chote hain. The parents are greater than the child, right? He practically becomes your child or your beloved, your priyatam. This is only possible through this divine power, bhakti, and that is only possible if you go beyond the field of liberation, moksha, mukti. So you see, within the divine field, there are different options. You can just ask God for mukti, and He's very quick to give it. Why? Because He's relieved. If this soul had asked me for bhakti, tab meri durdasha ho sakti hai. Just like you were hearing from Kripaluji Maharaj's video speech today, Mother Yashoda ties up Krishna and threatens him with a little stick. So Krishna is thinking, if I give this soul bhakti, this soul may also tie me up. I'm so relieved they asked for mukti. Anyway, Krishna is happy to give bhakti. Vedavyasji is just teasing him a little bit, saying that you have this great thing, this bhakti, and so you're happy to give mukti instead of bhakti. So there's different divine goals. Even within the field of bhakti, well, there's actually something else that comes in between. You have the field of mukti, then you have the field of attaining God and getting a divine body, senses, and mind so you can experience Him, but He is still God and you're a soul. So there's a distance between you. Nonetheless, you experience the unlimited divine bliss. Beyond that is the field of bhakti, where God comes right to you. He's that close. Your personal friend, master, child, beloved. And within this field of bhakti, again, you have 8 different levels. You have prema bhakti, sneha bhakti, man bhakti, pranaya bhakti, rag bhakti, anurag bhakti, bhavavesh bhakti, mahabhav bhakti. 8 levels of bhakti depending which relationship you adopt in the devotional period. If you love Sri Krishna the way a friend loves a friend, you go right up to this raga bhakti level. It's the 5th level of, it's also called levels of prem, levels of divine love. So if you love God the way a servant loves his master, you go to the first, prema bhakti. That's called dasya bhav. Then if you go to the divine world, you get that permanent state where that becomes your divine status. You're a dasya bhav bhakt of Bhagwan, and you've attained prema bhakti. If you love him with sakhya bhav, as best friends, you bypass all of that and you go to raga bhakti, the 5th level. If you love him as your own child, you go even beyond that to anurag bhakti, the 6th level. But if you love him with madhurya bhav, the priyatam bhav, then you bypass all of that and you reach bhavavesh, and even to certain levels within mahabhav bhakti, the topmost level. So you see, so many choices. It depends, how do you worship God? What relationship do you feel in your heart when you think of him? And also, what attainment has your guru? Does your guru represent on the earth planet? What attainment has your guru reached? That also factors in. So you have to consider all of this. Just saying, I want God, that's only the beginning. In what way do you want God? Do you want to attain Nirakar Brahm, formless God, and get mukti? Do you want to attain Paramatma, Almighty God, and just have a distant relationship with him? Or do you want to attain Bhagwan, the loving form of God, Ram, Krishna, Radha, and have a personal relationship with them where you get to actually take part in their leelas? So these are higher and higher states. Although all divine states have unlimited bliss, but there's a further something extra enriching these higher and higher states. Like you have a perfume and you get gallons of that perfume and you concentrate all of those thousands of gallons down into 1 ounce. It's the same substance, but it's been further concentrated. So now instead of needing a cup of that perfume to perfume a room this size, 1 drop is enough to perfume the whole room. Something like that, these higher and higher divine states, they're all similar in nature, substantially, but they're further concentrated and enriched as we move up, right up to the topmost goal of Mahabhav Bhakti. All of this has already been explained in our scriptures and by our historical Rasik Mahapurush. It was made known in a very clear way to all the people of the world by Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj. With all of this understanding and all of this confusion cleared up, we can now very easily understand that when we look at the different sampradaya established by different saints, well, they all had different teachings, they all worshiped different forms of God, and they all taught different styles of devotion. So nowadays people, again, look at it in confusion, that even within the path of bhakti, there's so many choices, so many different saints, so many ways of devotion. How do you know what's correct? Shree Kripaluji Maharaj made it so easy to understand that each one of those saints was correct. Then why the differences? 3 main differences we can very quickly reconcile. Number 1, the philosophical teachings. Why are they different? Because they're describing a divine thing, a divine situation, God, the relationship of souls with God and Maya with God, in a material language, for one thing. And for another thing, it's like this mandir, if one person is standing outside those doors and he writes in his book a description of this mandir, and another person is standing outside those doors and he's writing a description of this mandir, the description is going to be different. Both are going to be correct. Now, the analogy of blind men or blindfolded men groping in the dark at an elephant and describing it, that's not a good analogy for this, because these saints are not blind. They're all-knowing, God-realized saints. So they're not just feeling an elephant's leg and saying, no, the elephant is like a tree trunk, and the other one is saying, grabbing his tail, saying, no, it's like a snake. They're not ignorant. These saints, they're just standing and from a different perspective, knowingly describing about God and souls and Maya. So one may be standing on that side, one may be standing on that side, and then you compare their writings and you say, why doesn't this saint agree with this saint? They're both saints. They're just describing a huge topic from a slightly different perspective. That's all. There's no jhagada. There's no argument between them. So the philosophical teachings can be easily understood in that way. It's still not possible for a material mind to reconcile those teachings. It's enough for us to know that there are differences because they're describing from different perspectives. Leave the reconciling up to the Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharajas. We can just take the benefit of such knowledge being made available. So that's number 1, the philosophical differences. Number 2, people look and say, this saint taught devotion to that form of God. This saint worshipped Durga. This one worshipped Hanumanji. This one worshipped Shiva. This one worshipped Krishna. This one worshipped Radha Krishna. This one taught devotion to Krishna and said, think of him as your child. This one taught devotion to Krishna and said, think of him as your beloved. This one taught devotion to Dwarikadish Shri Krishna, the almighty form of Shri Krishna. So confusing, so many differences. Which one was right? They're all right. I told you there are so many possibilities in the divine world. When a soul attains one of those, that becomes their divine attainment. And if that soul comes on the earth planet, they're going to represent that form of God and that particular divine attainment on the earth planet. Very simple. So one saint has attained Ram and he's going to teach devotion to Ram. Another saint has attained Dwarikadhish Krishna. He's going to teach devotion to him. Another saint adopted Vatsalya Bhav, worshipped Krishna as his own son. So he attained Krishna in that way. He's going to explain to the souls about that. The one who attained Shri Krishna with Madhurya Bhav, a divine gopi, can also descend in this world and teach the souls about Gopi Bhav. So there's no disagreement. It all makes sense, and it's up to us as souls to say, okay, I have all of these options. I should find the saint that's teaching devotion to the form of God I want to attain. That's it. All the forms are one, yes, but there's going to be a difference in the experience. If you ask me for water and it's 0 degrees outside, you're thirsty, you want water, and I bring you a block of ice, you look at me like, what's the matter with you? And I say, what's the matter with you? It's H2O. Isn't that what you ask for? It's all the same. Say, no, but there's a practical difference in the outer attributes when it's in a solid state compared to when it's in a liquid state. Chemically, it's the same substance, fine, but the outer characteristics are different. Same thing with God and different forms of God. Internally, he's exactly the same, but externally, he's giving a different experience as Vishnu than he is as Radha Krishna. That's why Vishnu tells Lakshmi, when I have my eyes closed, I'm thinking of Ras Leela of Vrindavan, thinking of Radha and Krishna. It's told in Sam Rahasya Upanishad. There's some quotations on the panels up there. So, the saints are all in agreement. They're just representing different forms of God and different divine attainments. As pertains to the form of devotion they taught, whereas they all taught devotion, bhakti, each one of them, they all taught surrender to God to receive His grace. Without exception, all the true saints did. But the form of devotion that they taught, meaning what should you do, that differed. One said, do seva to Krishna, keep a murti of Shri Krishna in your house, and treat him like he's your own son, and serve him, wake him up in the morning, bathe him, dress him, send him out to graze the cows. Oh, first you have to feed him breakfast, send some lunch with him, then let him have an afternoon nap when he comes back, again give him a bath, dress him, do his shringar, give him his dinner, then put him to sleep at night after his bedtime snack. So you keep serving him all day long. One saint may say, this is the form of devotion, do that. Another saint may say, just chant his name all the time. That's the form of devotion he's teaching. Another saint may say, chant his name and do jap. Count the number of times on the jap beads. Another saint may say, read about his leelas in the Bhagavatam or the Ramayana. In other words, you're doing pat. So, seems like a contradiction, right? Again, no contradiction. What is the reason they're telling all of these practices? To engage a person's mind in thinking of Krishna or whatever form of God they're worshipping. No other reason. So Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj explained that devotion is only done in here. Smartavyo satatam Vishnur Vismartavyo na jatu chit. True devotion means remembering God all the time. Man se. And never forgetting Him, even for a moment. Na bhulo man pal chhin aadhe. Sumiro nit govinda radhe. Always remember, never forget. If you're remembering Him, you're doing bhakti. If you forgot Him, then there's a break in your bhakti. So why do kirtan? To help you remember, to help you do smaran, or what we call rup dhyan, visualizing the form of your beloved Ishtadev. So all the saints introduced forms of devotion to help people engage their mind in thinking of God, because that's the thing that develops your surrender. They weren't trying to introduce like some rigid thing that if you do it this way, you're right. If you don't do it that way, you're wrong. But that's what it became in many cases after those saints left. In other words, they introduced a style of devotion which was appropriate for the people of that time, along with their philosophical explanations and everything revolving around the form of God they were representing in the world. And that was preserved by their followers. And other saints also came. And as I explained, there would have been some differences in their philosophical explanations, difference in the form of God they worship, difference in the style of devotion they taught, although the internal thing would have been the same. So then over centuries, the followers, it happens in the world, become rigid. No, you have to do devotion like this. I'm in this sampradaya. And the one who began our sampradaya said you have to worship Krishna like this. That sampradaya is wrong. There's plenty of that in the world nowadays. Instead of following the teachings of their original master, they spend their energy in criticizing the other sampradayas. A sampradaya is a temporary thing. Dharma is eternal. Dharma, bhakti, is eternal. A sampradaya is a temporary thing. A saint introduces teachings that match the people of that time and is going to be the best thing to bring them quickly on the path of devotion towards God. And then the followers cement that sampradaya, that this is the way it has to be done, the way this master said. But there are so many masters living in so many different areas at so many different times, so of course there's going to be variations in their teaching. And if they're all cemented like that and all the followers are rigidly proclaiming that this is the way, so you have these temporary things that are being followed rigidly, when really what we need to do is return to the originality, which is bhakti, surrender of your mind to God. Whether you do it by doing jap or kirtan or pat or puja, makes no difference. Yena kena prakarena manah krishne niveshayet. Rupa Goswami said, any way you can attach your mind to Krishna is correct. That's it. Kripaluji Maharaj told a story of when he was young, when he was 16 and he went into the jungles. He met this great devotee, an elderly devotee, who was sitting doing devotion to Krishna with a broken comb and a broken piece of mirror. Is that described anywhere in any scripture? That, okay, here's a form of bhakti. You have to do bhakti holding a broken piece of comb and a broken piece of mirror. It's not described anywhere. But you know what that bhakt was doing? He was longing for Krishna to come to him. He's sitting in outside of his hut in the jungle, watching the path that Krishna could approach from. And in his mind, he's thinking of himself as a gopi. And he's trying to comb his hair and fix his beard so that he looks presentable when Krishna comes. So that's his faith. He's not playing make-believe. In his heart, he's so far in his devotion, he believes Krishna could come any moment and I have to look my best when he comes. But in that meditation he's doing, which is not a meditation anymore, it's a reality for him, he loses consciousness in that excitement that Krishna may come. So he's never actually getting the tangles out of his hair or out of his beard. He falls unconscious. The comb goes over here. The mirror goes over there. He again regains consciousness, picks it up and tries. Kripaluji Maharaj is seeing this whole thing, and he explained to us that, you see, he's doing bhakti like that. Anything wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that. However you can attach your mind to Krishna works. So you see again how Kripaluji Maharaj takes these simple concepts. Simple doesn't mean not high. They're the highest concepts, but also simple, elegantly simple. And just uses them to clear up all the confusion and all the arguments. So there's nothing left to worry about. But do bhakti. Engage your mind in thinking of Radha Krishna or whoever your Ishtadev is, and do it in whatever way works for you. If you're remembering them, you're correct. If you forgot them, there's something wrong. That's it. Now you understand the path of bhakti. So in this way, there's no disagreement between the sampradayas, but we have to remember that a sampradaya is a temporary thing. It started at a particular time. It will also end. Sampradayas pop up and they also disappear. But bhakti, dharma, that's eternal. So there are many other things that Sri Kripaluji Maharaj helped to clear up as far as people's understanding of the spiritual knowledge in this world. We'll talk about some more of that, along with how Sri Kripaluji Maharaj became Jagadguru, which is also unheard of, never before happened. Although there were 4 previous original Jagadgurus, the way that Sri Maharaji became Jagadguru had never happened before and may never happen again. So I'll tell you about that tomorrow. Boliye Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki. We can stand for Aarti. Can someone sing the Aarti for